All right. So we are deep in the middle of final project here, and we're building out these tokens and we're working with events. So I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear here. And what I want to do is as we go through these sections, I know there's a lot of concepts being thrown around, things that we could have already gone over before, but now, we're kind of going through it quickly. So I want to make a few clarification videos to help you. So it's up to you if you want to watch these or just keep moving ahead, but each one's going to have a specific topic that we try to clarify for where we are. Right now, this one's going to be about events because we're talking about events. And I know I'm writing out these events and we looked at it before, but just in case you're a little bit unsure and you're saying, well, okay, we're making these events, but what really are events in Solidity and how is it relevant to what we're doing right now? And it could be confusing you with the functions because you have to remember the events are not actually the functions of the events, right? The events are just events that we emit to the outside world to let our consumers know about what is going on. So the transfer events and these things. So let's just let's just go through it together. And again, there's going to be a bunch of these. You'll see me with a lot of ES6 arrows, anonymous function hours. You don't know what that is? I'll make a video on that, and other things as well. So let's start with this one to get the ball rolling. Let's get this ball. Let's get this ball rolling. All right. So let's start with so let's just start with events. So what are events? Well, let's pretend, all right, to help you understand better what events really are in Solidity. Let's pretend that we have a decentralized exchange. All right. So if we had a decentralized exchange, if we were building a decentralized exchange app, then on the smart contract, right, the traders, they can trade tokens. But what we want to do is we want to emit events so that the traders can get the data, so that our front mobile applications get the data. They can see the events, they can see what is going on. And this can only happen outside. These events don't get stored in Solidity. We can't access it afterwards. The only people who can access it are the people outside, okay? And so it's a one-way transmission, and it's got lower gas costs, all right? And after you emit these events, you can't read them in the past, all right? Only for entities outside of the blockchain. Not stored as memory. It's not stored as memory. And that's why they have lower gas costs, all right? So hopefully that helps to clarify. But let's take it even further. Let's write out the events and actually look at it to help you really understand what's going on with events. So I have this contract. You don't have to code along. You can if you want, if it helps you. So let's say we have this contract, learn events, right? So I want to make an event. So how do we actually make events? There's two steps. So the first thing we want to do is one, we want to declare the event, and two, we want to emit the event. All right. And I realize it's the typing could have gone the way. So one, declare the event, and two, we want to emit the event. That's how you make events. All right. It's a two-step process. All right. So let's first declare an event, and we can call the event what we want, whatever we want. So we do it by bringing an event, right? Just like when we want to declare anything in Solidity, we're declaring an event, right? And this is like a data type, right? So we're bringing this event. And so we've been making in our project these send events, transfer events, so that we can be specific. Let's say for this decentralized exchange, we want to make a new trade, right? An event called new trade. So we would make an event and we call it new trade. Nope, new trade. Okay. And then we bring in the parentheses. And then what we put inside are our arguments. They're the parameters that are going to set up this event. So what's important? What do we want to emit? What are the valuable things? Well, if it's a trade, things that could be important is the date to start with, right? So that we can emit the date for when the trade happened. And so the date would be what? Well, the date would be a number, right? So we'll say uint and we're going to say date, all right? What else is important? Well, the addresses, right? Like the address of the trades. From where is this trade coming from and where is it going? So we can create an address from, all right, and an address to. And then what else would be important? Well, the amount, right? If we're doing a trade, they want to see what the amount is. So let's make an amount, all right? This is all it takes to declare the event, all right? We declare the event. Now, what if we want to emit the event, all right? What if we have a function where we make the trade? So we want to put the event in that function, right? Because when we make the trade, that's when we want to emit the event. That's when the trade is actually happening. That's why the trade would go into a function called trade, right? Transfer would go into a function called transfer, and transfer from. Send would go to a send. Sent would go to a sent, right? So that's why we would put the trade in a trade function. So to the emit into a trade function. So what we want to do is create a function, all right? And this, let's say this is our trade function, right? So what would our trade function take as arguments? Well, we would put an address to, right? Because it's a trade. And then what else do we want to say? Well, the amount, right? So uint amount. And since it's a trade, it doesn't have to be public. We're going to make it external, all right? We're starting to practice better visibility mechanisms and making everything public. That's a big no-no. So we just do this external, all right? And now in the trade, we can have the functionality for our trade plus what? Plus what? Plus the emit of the event, right? This is where we want to emit the event. So how do we emit events? The second part of this. How do we emit the event? Well, in order to emit the event, we just say, all right, now it's time to emit, just like that. And previously, if you end up working with older Solidity projects, you're going to see that actually emit. You didn't have to actually write emit. So if you see just the event being brought in, don't get confused, all right? Don't get confused. It's just because the emit isn't there. So that's just a heads up. So we would say emit new trade. And now we could hook up the trade to our arguments, right? So what do we want to emit in our new trade? Well, the date, that's the first one. So how can we bring in the date? How can we set this up? Well, we could actually use one of Solidity's global variables, which actually shows you the timestamp. And all you need to do is just type in block.timestamp. All right, so that's the date. Well, since it's a trade, now we can actually put our addresses, right? We want the to, where it's going, and the amount, right? So we want to have to, and we want the amount. This is what we want to emit, right? This is what we want to emit. And it's also important to note, something else I want to note, when you're writing the names of your events, you should always have camel case in the beginning. You should always do a capital letter. So camel case is a good convention, something to remember. All right. Now, how does this actually set up? How do people actually see this event? Well, we would do that with a library, Web3.js, and we're actually going to do it in the course. So I'm going to show you how this actually works. We're not going to do it now, but an outside consumer can't see the event through Web3. All right, Web3.js. All right, and also just so you know, block.timestamp is a global variable, special variable that gives the current timestamp. All right. All right. So hopefully now this makes sense. Hopefully this makes more sense in case you had some confusion with events. The final thought I'll leave you with also, something that could actually help you further clarify, I know we already talked about in the course, is the indexes. So what are these indexes? Well, we can add these keywords index, and the thing is, the thing is what index does, it allows the outside consumer to filter through and find, let's say, filter out and get the information that they need. All right. But when we do this indexed, it's going to cost higher gas, right? This is going to cost Ethereum higher because then they got to add the index to it. So you can only use 3 indexes. That's all you're permitted to use per event. All right. You want to be events. So you want to choose here what's important. So we're going to say index the date, and then index, let's say 2, and the amount, right? And so that's why we leverage the index, okay? Okay, and so that's it. That's the extent. That's the extent of working and mastering events. Not just a question of hooking it all up, seeing it in action. And we're going to do that in the course. So this is just a way for you to focus out, think about this out of context, and just get a broader and get a more focused microscopic version of what we're doing. Now we get back to the course, go back to the events in case you had confusion, and hopefully this will help. I'm going to leave this resource for you and the code. So if you didn't code along, you have access to this resource as well. All right, that's it. I hope you found this helpful. And all right, let's get back to decentralizing some fun stuff together. Okay, see you there.